All right, welcome to Nick's House podcast. I'm happy to be back. I'm so happy to be back and actually casting. How long has it been?
Welcome back.
3 weeks. A month?
Yeah, something like a month. But I'm especially excited because this episode is about something that's very controversial, very fun topic to talk about, at least in my opinion. I've been looking forward to it, and it's about the drug war. It's about drugs in general, policies on drugs. And our goal with this episode is to kind of examine where we stand as a nation or as a world on how we deal with these things, how our government deals with it, how law enforcement deals with it, and society views it. And just kind of take a step back and examine, are we doing as well as we could? Because lives are literally in the balance. So hanging the balance both in prison and also just social interactions. So I wanted to start out with just history. I want to try to go as quick as I can to keep it from being at all dull. History of drug use among humans and how humans have dealt with it. So,
I have a question, Nick.
Yeah.
How did drug happen?
How did drug happen? Drug come up, go boom. So I tried to look up the most ancient forms of humans using drugs that I could. And what I found was it becomes hard to see just how far back we started using them, right? But using different sciences and everything, scientists have been able to discover a few things about ancient humans and their use. So opium grows from a plant, right? And poppy seeds, we all know that. Certain parts of the world it flourishes. So that was found in 600 BC, as early as 600 BC, lodged in the teeth of people in what is now known as Rome, near Rome, Italy. And it looks like, from studies of the archaeology, that it was used in religious ceremonies. Alcohol goes far back as 7000 BC, maybe even farther. It's been found in jars in China. It comes in many different forms. Things can be fermented to turn into alcohol. All kinds of fruit can be turned into alcohol. These particular jars in China were rice, honey, fermented fruit that they were using. It's been used by multiple religions, including Judaism and Christianity, in holy ceremonies, no less. And then there's psychoactive fungi. So the chemicals inside of those obviously have quite an effect on the human mind. And those go back to as far as 8,600 BC in, surprise to me, southern Texas. So peyote and what we now know is that chemically is mescaline. Mescaline is also found in beans. So these things are just, they pop up out of the ground and people came across them and they...
What kind of beans, Nick?
Mescal containing beans. I don't know. And it's surmised that it's also been used for spiritual, religious type ceremonies throughout millennia. Coca leaves, 6000 BC, Peru, found in mummy teeth and mummy hair. Tobacco, 2000 BC, smoked in pipes. That long ago they had pipes. And as recently as 300 BC, also smoked in pipes. Nicotine itself, like the almost strained pure form of it, they obviously figured out that nicotine was the thing that was giving them the buzz. So we'll be talking a little bit more about modern stuff, but I thought this was important to realize because drugs have always been with us, or at least for these thousands and thousands of years. There's no reason to believe that they're ever going to go away. Therefore, it's something that we necessarily have to deal with, right? So you can fast forward to the 1950s and 60s. So you got the rise of the hippies, right? And what a blight on society, you know, this crazy revolutionary time. But the hippies, I would love to ask them what they think about that time period and how much benefit it really was to anyone.
It's too bad they're all dead. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, they're all gone. No, they're just old folks now.
They walk among us still.
They walk among us. They are our parents and grandparents, really. So, President Nixon was no friend of the hippies. and they were no friend of his. He saw them as a direct threat, and one of the best ways to keep them contained or keep them from being too big of a threat to his politics, his political movement, was to outlaw the drugs that they so lovingly espoused, right? So that especially included marijuana, LSD, other psychedelics, and of course cocaine. Cocaine, heroin became an easy devil because those have very dramatic effects on people in their lives. So all the way up until the 1980s with President Reagan, he did another crackdown. And John, you're going to go ahead and...
Yeah, real quick though, I can take it 2 steps back in American history. Something I found out that's pretty interesting is Civil War was first time that there was a pretty big portion of the population that was respectable, up and coming, high society. A lot of soldiers, I believe it was the first major American war where we had morphine to give the soldiers for field amputations, and a lot of them came back from the war addicted to morphine. And actually morphine was prescribed to a lot of the war widows and women who were having panic attacks and stuff while their husbands and sons were gone off to war. And so they were called habitués at the time because they had been habituated to the practice of shooting up morphine.
Wow, that's a lot of morphine moving around.
And then I found out that so from the poppy you get opium, morphine, and then heroin.
Oh, morphine's from poppies too?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
and
that.
basically each step in that rung is just more refined. And if I remember correctly, each one of those was developed to be an antidote to the addiction to the previous. So if you're addicted to opium, what you need to do is start taking morphine. Oh, you got addicted to morphine, here's some heroin. And heroin actually was intended to sound like the term hero, to make you feel heroic because it made you feel so good. And so it was this positive campaign that they were spinning. So that was pretty interesting. I'm sure, I know there were opium dens prior even to that, I believe, but then to my knowledge, the first subculture, you were talking about the hippies, and a lot of them really identified themselves as being people who were expanding their minds through, better living through chemistry, all that kind of stuff. And but the jazz scene was actually the first musical drug subculture, and it was a lot of really talented black musicians getting their white friends high, and and that pissed off Mr. Anslinger, who founded the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, and he almost lost his job. This is in the 1930s. He almost lost his job for using the N-word so frequently in inter-office memos that his own senator almost got him removed from his position. And this is the 30s when it was kind of okay to say that word. So and he's kind of partially responsible for Billie Holiday's death because she was a user self-medicating for some problems she had, and that really pissed him off, and he made it his personal vendetta to run her down, and he had a role in her deaths. Yeah, so, and that's kind of he's actually the great granddaddy of the drug war in America. So
the modern drug war,
30s.
Yeah.
And yeah,
so
the modern drug war.
Can I ask you a question? So as you were looking at the history of drugs in the world, did you also look up history of drug abuses? Because from what I can tell about the history of drug use and abuse, is that there are seems to be time and places in the world where it seems to get especially bad for a period of time. Like, for example, the crack epidemic of the 70s and 80s, and we're currently like right in the midst of a major
fentanyl.
Yeah, epidemic right now. Like it's horrible.
There have been. I did see there was gluts of that. I didn't see the Civil War one, but that makes total sense. But what one that I did come across was Vietnam War, or was it North Korean War? It was one of those two. And when they were over there, well, this was in the addiction video. Remember? That's what that was. Yeah. And I was blown away by that. That they were while they were over there, and maybe the video was massaging it or something, but I don't know. It was a pretty big claim where it said while they were over there, they were in such a depression that they would do that to make themselves happy.
So,
and then when they came home, the addiction went away because the real happiness was replacing it. But that doesn't work for the one you said, right? That doesn't correlate because they came home from the Civil War still addicted.
Well, I had a number of problems with that video. What is it, Ursat? Kyrgyzstan. So they were claiming that, Grandma got her hip replaced and she got a ton of morphine and she came home and she wasn't addicted. Lots of people get addicted from all the stuff that they get in the hospitals.
Yeah.
Tons. I was like, what the heck are they talking about? That's actually a pretty big cause of addiction in America right now.
I agree.
A lot of people,
Yeah, it's kind of intellectually dishonest, or
It's suspect.
or sloppy, at least.
I only chose that one because it was an appendage to the other one that we watched. And maybe it was bad. Maybe they were both bad videos.
Well, I did try to find out like who was behind the video, like who was funding it, and one of George Soros.
Okay, I'm done.
No.
I don't care.
I'm not a George Soros guy, but my point is like videos like that don't just pop up out of nowhere. Like there's always something behind it. Like PragerU, for example. It's not like a bunch of buddies got together and wanted to make these cute little political cartoons. It's people with lots and lots of money meeting people with some talents and skills and getting together and making some videos to try and sway public opinion. So there's always...
You gotta be careful with those guys, too.
Absolutely,
He's just some fucking guy in his garage, and he's like, hey, let's put out a video, and
Yeah.
So it's like, and that's why I watched like probably 80 videos, and I put a bunch of them up in the chat. But I knew you guys have lives to live, and you weren't gonna like go through them like I was. I was just like,
Well, and a lot of them, like I already have had these conversations with other friends of mine. So
I have an opening question for everybody. I'm curious how your parents talked to you about drugs, because at least for me, it was very formative about the way that I think about drugs. Maybe not so much for yourselves, but
okay.
Jordan.
I'm trying to remember. I mean, we just didn't do drugs.
Here, I'll
like,
prime the pump. My mom did a lot of drugs.
Oh, okay.
And she would talk about them, and they were very funny stories for the most part. She had some other darker stories that she only kind of hinted at because she did some things that she did not want to do while she was on drugs. And she told these stories from as early as I can remember, and it wasn't until probably I was going into junior high that she kind of sat me down and she's like, hey, Jonathan, I just wanted to let you know, I did some stupid stuff. The drugs were kind of fun. Like, I'm not going to lie to you about that. And that's why I always tell the stories as funny stories, because there was a lot of funny stuff that happened while I was on them. But having done them, I think it was a waste of time, and it was dangerous, and I would recommend that you don't. But you're going to be an adult, and you're going to do what you want, so, And I really appreciated that, because I never felt this like, oh no, the drugs, I can't do those, because I feel like that does build up this mythos of like
the sex appeal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, it was never.
It's never a taboo.
I kind of felt like I knew what was on the other side. So one of her stories was she dropped LSD right before a math test, and was putting her name on the sheet, and then went to problem 1, and all of a sudden, all the numbers got up off the page and marched out the door. And she waited, and she was just kind of giggling to herself, and they didn't come back, and so she just turned it in blank and walked out laughing, and the math teacher was blown away because she was pretty good at math, so he was like, what? But
why did she do that? That sounds like a really improper use of it. I mean, you wouldn't go in there. You wouldn't like drink a bunch of vodka and go in and take a math test.
My mother disdained school and was rewarded for it by being put into an honors program because she was pretty smart. But I think back then they were trying a lot of alternative things, like, oh, this must not be challenging enough for her. And I think that was partially the case. It was also partially the case you just thought it was stupid. So
Okay.
But,
yeah. Well, for me, I'm trying. As you're trying to remember that, I think we didn't really ever sit down and have a talk about drugs. At least not me. You have to realize my family. There's 9 kids, so there's different waves. But in my wave, we never really sat down and had a drug conversation. But
so like your older siblings, they were microdosing.
Yeah. It was, we're all homeschooled, so we're sitting there, microdosing while our mom was reading us history. No, I'm just kidding. No. But I think what my parents did do was they created this idea where, like, drinking isn't really wrong, but abusing alcohol is wrong, and smoking isn't necessarily wrong, but abusing smoke is wrong. And I think that so implicitly the message was that maybe, like, marijuana isn't necessarily wrong. No, for my parents' reputation, I want to say they never have said that marijuana is a good thing. But I think that what I got out of what they taught us about stuff like that was that maybe it's not inherently wrong. It's all in how you use it, and also just we were surrounded by I grew up in rural Virginia, and we were surrounded by neighbors who, a lot of them were abusing drugs, and we saw just how broken their families were, and that was a major anti-drug message in itself. So I'd say that's kind of how it was for us.
That's what you don't do. See what they're doing? See how bad
we never even said that. It's just like we saw what we saw as little kids what it did to their family. Like, we never really had to talk about it. It's like we're all here. We get along with each other. Our parents, they're struggling, but they care about us, and we're like surrounded by these decimated families. It's like we just sort of internalize, like, oh, what's the difference between, like, yeah. So I think that's kind of how it was. We never really sat down and had a drug conversation, though. So
I can't remember really. I remember as a kid, looking back on it now, it's like, okay, he drank probably more than some people did, and sometimes that was used against him. Now I drink, like, we're literally all drinking right now, right, orange juice. Yeah, there's oranges in there, but there was a lot more going on, like the problems in our family, than just dad drink. I guess I wouldn't say that it wasn't some part of it, maybe, but it was never like, I don't remember any sit down conversations about hey, so here's this one drug, don't do that. What I remember about being a kid and learning about drugs came from the DARE program, DARE, Dare to Say No to Drugs, right? Which was the vestiges of Reagan's movements. This was like early 90s, right? And it was like, no, drugs or no. No, saying no drugs, say no drugs. And of course that means, like, that picture of like a doobie with the smoke coming out of it, that's like, oh, that's Satan for sure.
Did you have to sign the pledge?
Yeah, I did all that, and I loved the DARE thing. I had the shirt, and now people, you can get that shirt now online. It's like
because of the way that my mother had inoculated me, I thought that thing was so stupid, and I don't remember how old I was. It was probably like 4th grade or something. Does that sound about right? Yeah. 4th, 5th grade?
3rd grade.
I considered not signing it and make a stink about it, but I didn't.
For what reason? Why?
Just because I felt like it was so stupid. Like, this is not going to stop anybody from...
But maybe it did, though.
Maybe. Maybe.
I feel the same way, but I think when I was growing up, though, the Reagan era was over. It was just say no.
Just say no.
Yeah, because I think it was Hillary Clinton or something.
No, it was Nancy Reagan.
Oh, Nancy. Oh, wait. Okay, just kidding. It was Reagan then. Okay. So, but
for me, my parents were both, I would say, what we would say extremely anti-drug. I did have a sit down. I can't name one. I mean, it's just kind of like a constant thing, like, No, I'm not even joking.
Sit down at the dinner table. You haven't done any drugs today, have you?
No, it wasn't like that. It was more like...
So, Andrew.
What's that smell, Andrew?
I don't know, once a year, maybe. Once a year. Be like,
At Christmas, before you open your presents, Andrew, tell me, have you smoked the devil weed?
Yeah, I would kind of try and pry into my parents' past and ask them questions and stuff, but I never was really good at doing that. Didn't get too much out of them. All I found out was that my dad, didn't drink anymore. He used to drink. And my mom, her story was she had, I guess her dad caught her smoking once, maybe in high school. I don't.
Did he force her to smoke a whole?
Yes, he smoked her to force old packs.
Same thing happened to my
Cigarette?
mom. So she was vomiting.
Yes,
Same thing
yes.
happened to my mom. Yeah.
Yeah, and she said that cured her.
Well, yeah, it might have cured my mom because later when she was in high school and her parents didn't keep as close an eye on her, she tried to pick up smoking, but she never got addicted to nicotine, and she couldn't remember to smoke, and so she'd be standing around with her friends and realize she was the only one not smoking. She'd be like, "Oh shit, I gotta get one out," and then she'd. But so she just
Turbo
kind of gave
smoke.
up after a while because she realized how stupid it was. But she always told me, like, the big thing was they'd say like, yeah, if I ever get drafted, and I get my arm blown off like some guys in Nam, I got to be able to light it with one hand. So the one thing that she did perfect was being able to bend her match over and light it with one hand and pull her cig out. And
She got good at that.
yeah.
Did your mom smoke your whole life?
After she died, I believe.
She stopped.
No, I believe we found some cig. I think she would kind of sneak some sometimes, but no, she never really. It was never a habit. But I think when she'd get stressed out, she'd maybe smoke a cigarette. Yeah. But.
Sorry, Andrew, we cut you off. Did you? Sorry, you had more story.
Yeah, they were curious, hey, what are all the kids doing drugs, marijuana and stuff? I'd be like, whatever. I don't know. It was average.
It wasn't really on your radar anyway.
No, not too much. Yeah.
Mine neither.
I was definitely uncool enough in high school to never be offered any.
Did you guys all go to public high school?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm the only one who didn't.
I was never offered anything, as far as I can remember, ever.
People were, but
Of course, I grew up in Mormonville, so.
Yeah.
Not to say that there's not plenty of stuff flowing in Mormonville, but it wasn't a thing. I don't remember it ever being a thing.
It probably was just under the scene, on the surface,
So my dad worked at a sound house, doing post-production in Hollywood. And the only job he ever refused to do was a porn movie that they got apparently, and it was Mormon Production Company.
what?
Yeah, I never got the backstory on that one, but
Hey, was that Rule 64 or something?
what?
Let's not go there. Let's go back. Okay. So,
That's bizarre.
all right. So
Yeah.
Next week's topic.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, I do remember the DARE program. I was a fan of that, man. Officer, whatever his name was, that dude was, he was cool in my book.
The Lion. Was it the Lion? With the
Gruff the crime dog?
Well, there was McGruff.
Scruff.
We had McGruff come with this lady with a puppet in our school, and she would like move his mouth as the audio played, and she'd be like, "Hey kids, if you see something bad, like whatever." I can't remember.
Hey, McRuff the crime dog. What do you have to say for us today? You kids not better do any drugs.
If you see something bad, tell an adult.
That's funny.
Teeth will fall out.
High school age? No.
No, this is third, fourth grade.
Third grade. And, yeah. So, I mean, not all the kids were into it, especially the kids that were like, I don't know, their older brothers were like gangsters or something, but they obviously didn't like the officer. I learned a lot. I'm like the type that would need something like that, to help understand the whole world that is, drugs and stuff. And
Whereas your parents might be trying to keep you sheltered from
Yeah, my
it. You need to
parents
see it
yeah,
and know it and then face it.
my parents weren't going to show me that DARE stuff. They'd be like, whatever. It's just,
There's a good case for like a federal program of like awareness training.
yeah.
Jordan said he didn't like it. He didn't
Yeah.
like
I thought it was stupid. I thought
I'm
it
not
was retarded
saying
because I really felt like it set up a paper man, or straw man, of what drugs were actually like.
Yeah, but you're 11. What's a straw man when you're 11?
I mean,
Well, but then you get older. No, you get older. Yeah.
Listen. As an 11-year-old, I trusted my mother, who was way smarter than these goofy idiots who were coming to my school, saying, "Hey kids, I'm just keeping it real. Don't do drugs, or you'll talk like me." And I just thought, this clearly, they're selling us something.
Yes.
And And I think almost our entire generation is
But it's information they're
is
selling, right?
wary of people trying to sell us stuff.
Yeah.
And previous generations were a little bit more accepting of advertising and stuff just because it was new. And
Maybe not. I don't know. I would give them some.
so I
credit.
feel like
I mean, Reefer Madness actually convinced a lot of people that marijuana was like this thing that made you go
it didn't sell a lot of tickets though. but
good.
but anyway,
Fake news.
So-
It's hashtag fake news.
Andrew, I think, was the odd man out in terms of liking it. Overall, I believe drug usage has only gone up, so the program didn't work. I think we can say that objectively.
It probably worked for some people, but for most people, it didn't.
Maybe, yeah. So, I don't have any stats for that, but we can now move to maybe Nick.
Here's what I wanted to segue with that was, so we all kind of talked about like what it was like to be a kid learning about drugs. I think we can all agree, and this is important, to always really benchmark these moments when we have a common ground moment. So kids should not be doing drugs, right? And that should be a goal of our society generally. I think across the board, everyone can basically agree, nod at each other, and say, "Yeah, let's keep kids from doing that." Right? Just like a lot of things.
Another thing we can agree on that I noticed as we were talking is that all of us had some sort of real life interaction with maybe not drugs directly, but the effects of drugs. Like for me, it was seeing the people around us where we lived and having their lives, just something was off in their lives. And when you get older, you realize what that's attributed to. For you,
Yeah, I forgot to mention my buddy committed suicide with oxycodone.
Dang.
I mean, you're telling about all the neighbors and everything. Definitely affected my friend. He also had some other family stuff, but anyway, it did affect me. And yeah, I knew they're dangerous. It could be abused, basically. That's what I learned from that.
yeah. And then also you saw the attitudes the older kids had towards the dare guys, and you understand there's politics in the way that people, just this anti-authority attitude that sort of feeds the, alcohol is this, drugs as being this taboo that's kind of sexy. And then with you is just conversations with your mom, and she's just telling you the way, just telling it like it is.
My mom was also, though, very anti-authority, and I got some of that through osmosis, and I didn't realize it was anti-authority until recently, and I've kind of had to assess that because now that I've come to the opinion that authority is necessary for society to run correctly, and it doesn't make it any easier for authority if you're just being a jerk to them the whole time and asking challenging questions just to challenge them and make them look stupid. So,
But it's a real psychological phenomenon. Like what I discovered in some of the stuff I was reading, psychologists call this costly signaling. Costly signaling. I've never heard of this term before, but it's a phenomenon. It's like widespread amongst humans, some other species of like hominids and stuff, and it's displaying to the others in the group that, hey, I'm courageous, I'm brave, I'm willing to do things that everyone else is like. And then it creates this kind of allure, like, that makes them want to, like, if it's other animals, it makes them want to mate with them. Teenagers do this a lot, adolescents do this a lot. You're at a party, you want to do something macho and cool and show off, and sometimes it just takes the form of, well, I'm going to rebel against my parents because, I mean, you guys could all weigh in on what that's like to want to rebel a little bit against your parents.
sometimes during a drinking game, you just have to expose yourself and maybe have... Yeah, like Kavanaugh, I mean... Sorry, previous conversation.
Yeah.
I don't actually recommend that.
So that's an important, because this is all psychological, because you could do this you could abuse food, you could eat too much, insert food here, you could do that too much and it causes a serious health problem, which could cause medical problems, which could cause, effects on your family, etc. You could do it also with a substance, like even a legal one like alcohol. You could abuse that to the point where your health is so much affected, or your family's so much affected, and now it has these repercussions and ripples outward. And so we're talking about psychology here. So I think the approach should be more of like an intelligent examination of human psychology, like how we deal with these things. And every drug is different, and some are beneficial, right? Could we agree on that? Like some drugs, even some drugs that we've talked about in the chat and stuff before the show and everything, Some of these have legitimate benefits that if we carefully hone them out, carve them out of the surrounding clutter and mess that surrounds them, they could be something that we could use, that could be a good thing, right? So I thought if we went around and said, like, of the illegal drugs that you know, do you know of any benefits, perceived benefits, that might make you think, that one, see, we need to take a better look at that, right? We've talked a little bit about marijuana, obviously.
Yeah,
like, should marijuana be a Schedule I drug next to heroin?
No.
Why or why not,
Well, okay, I'm far from an expert, but there was a time a few years ago when I was doing a lot of research on drugs because I had a friend at the time who was very, very pro drugs. So I remember I went through and read of the effects of all the drugs, or all the big ones, I would say. And I remember I was reading about, I started with marijuana. I was like, okay, yeah, I see there's some problems there. It could possibly impair brain development. It might slow down response times. It might be bad for you over the long run. But then I started reading about cocaine and meth and all that, and it's just like they're on a totally different level of destruction. Because then you have like major like physical side effects, like how just inhaling a powder through your nose it's just physically damaging.
Gonna wear away your septum.
Yeah, it's just all, and it's just the effects of marijuana, like when it goes wrong, is just nothing on the level of those types of drugs. And not only that, but there seem to be a lot of beneficial aspects to marijuana use that I hate when potheads exaggerate the good aspects of marijuana.
Yeah, it doesn't do a service to it either.
Yeah, but it is not honest or informed to say that marijuana doesn't have legitimate medical benefits, or just serving as like a social lubricant, or just helping you relax at the end of a long hard day.
Same with this. Like if somebody said, "Oh, alcohol, you know what it does? Oh man, it's got the best way of making you relax. Like you're not going to have any more anxiety or stress at work if you use alcohol." We would all be like, "No, that's not quite how that works."
I would say you shouldn't be drinking alcohol at work, so I don't know.
So phrasing and how we word these things is important, and everybody on both sides needs to control their language, because otherwise misinformation just like.
So I think this is an interesting test case. Elon Musk went on Joe Rogan, smoked a laced cigar.
Did not inhale, if you examine the footage, but that's a whole nother conversation.
He also looked like freaking Evel Knievel doing it with his eyebrow raised every screenshot they take.
That meme's never going away.
Yeah. My pastor from LA has posted 3 memes using that photo, and they're all really stupid. But
he's in big trouble. Elon's in big trouble because of that.
So that's why I was going to bring it up. Because so I mean, what does that signal to people, that he is a loose cannon? That he is unhinged. That the marijuana will make him do things like what? I think the most credible thing is that he holds a security clearance.
And those old laws still apply to his security clearance, therefore he's got issues.
Yeah.
But societally, he doesn't have any issues, because everybody who sees that meme just laughs.
Not everybody. I mean, because
Definitely
all
not
the
true.
old people that have a lot of money that have invested in him.
Okay, so I should have said that. The old people.
They're the ones with all the money. You don't have $1 million invested in Tesla.
No.
Hold on. Let's throw in.
No, you're misunderstanding.
Let's not make old people a
I am totally ageist. Back off.
Sorry, old people.
Let's backtrack to that, because that's something young people love to say is, the old people.
Just like the old people like to shit on the young people. Like,
Yeah, but whenever there's an old, like, something that the old people believe in, there is always a compelling reason behind it. And you have to remember that old people who are successful and have stakes in a company like Tesla and have enough influence that they can control how things go, they're not just sitting at home watching Netflix all day. They're living their lives, and they've seen people that they went to high school with fall by the wayside. They've seen people they went to college with fall by the wayside. And so it's not, they've lived lives and they've seen how it happens, how things tend to happen. And I would say that somebody who smokes pot generally is probably not as likely to be extremely successful or to become a CEO of a major company like that.
I don't have oodles of experience, but yes, I think I would say my gut is that statistically, if you took the population of regular pot users, they're less productive
overall. Yeah,
overall. But I mean, also productivity is not necessarily the measure of
happiness.
Yeah, happiness or
no,
success
it's not.
in life.
But if you are the CEO of a company like Tesla and the eyes of the world are on you, that's an entirely different league.
And what I said was societally, Elon risks nothing, because everybody who's looking at that meme that's like us, we look at that and we laugh. We go, "Oh my gosh, oh, he's gonna get it. He's in deep now." With those people who, okay, I do want to retract what I said, because just because you're of an older generation doesn't mean that you don't understand practicality. It doesn't mean you don't have common sense. But there are things that travel kind of the old crowd hangs on to that are not the best.
Yeah, that's true.
Because racism is a very strong. There's people that are still alive today who saw dark-skinned people being hung from trees, and it was okay. It was okay, but like at a certain time, or segregated drink fountains, bathrooms, etc., like that. So, and I'm not trying to get extreme with that. I'm just saying it doesn't always mean.
It doesn't always mean, but the opposite, the inverse applies as well.
What I originally said, though, and I'm sorry I didn't say it well enough, was that Elon risks nothing with a good portion of the people that saw that. Because most of us are like, smoked thing. Most people were like, look, he doesn't even inhale it. He doesn't even actually put it into his lungs, So that's a detail. But
honestly, even though I was the one that brought up this example and made that the crux of the issue, I think that if the other board members were actually smart, they were just using the marijuana usage as a single thing to point at, but he was exhibiting a lot of dissatisfied, erratic, kind of hangdog behavior, which with a company like that, is he the president of Tesla? CEO?
I believe he's the CEO.
CEO. So much of that company's worth is based upon how people view the CEO, and he was not putting his best foot forward, which made for a very compelling interview, but probably would have made the stock prices plummet even if he had not taken a hit. And I think it's just that was something easy for them to point to, which they had a legal reason for saying that's what bothered them.
And they'd already been upset with him.
Because he said he was going to take it private and screw all of them.
Yeah.
And the thing with the cave diving and all that.
There's a lot at stake. So let's say that if let's say Steve Jobs at his peak would have gone on the Joe Rogan podcast and taken a hit of marijuana, everybody would have been like, nobody would have cared. Nobody would have cared because
everybody knows Jobs did LSD, though.
Yeah, everyone knows Jobs did LSD, and not only that, but he was running Apple like he was running a tight ship. Apple was killing it near the end of his life. Nobody would have cared. The thing about Musk is that him smoking marijuana on the Joe Rogan podcast, that's just like the icing on it's just a straw that broke the camel's back. So I don't think it's necessarily that he was smoking marijuana. It's just that it was just the latest thing to happen. So. And if he's doing that, he's smoking marijuana, it always makes people wonder, what else is he doing behind the scenes?
Yeah. So Nick, what do you want to see happen?
Well, my point in bringing up marijuana in the first place, I kind of wanted to get it out of the way, actually, quickly, but it just is too juicy and fun to talk about. But I feel like I want to believe that it's a common ground thing for all four of us here, and probably most people that. I'm almost just exhausted with it being said. It's just come on. Marijuana is not the big boogeyman that everyone's always said it was. We need to treat it differently. Colorado, Oregon are already on their way. A bunch of other states medically have been approving it. The wave is happening. I really don't feel like it's a bad wave. I feel like it's an intelligent application of dealing with that very specific drug. Now, moving on to another drug that I think we can all agree across the board. Cocaine, still a recreational drug by most accounts. Like you said, Novocaine is associated with it,
Synthetic form,
right?
which I didn't look that up. I think it means it's not derived from the same source, but it is chemically representational of the same. So, yeah, but it's used as a topical, so it doesn't affect you the same way. But or local anesthetic.
Whereas cocaine usage, we know, like how many comedians or musicians have used it to the point where they literally croaked. You know, that it's obviously not a good thing.
We've clarified there's cocaine and there's like crack cocaine.
Crack
Like there's
cocaine.
different levels. Like snorting a lot of coke is not the same thing as smoking in a crack pipe.
So how is it different?
I'm kind of rusty on the details.
So believe
It's been a while since I read about this stuff.
It's just more intense. That's it. You have a faster high, but it's
with which one? Which one's faster?
crack cocaine is just a more. It's a cheaper, quicker
You
high.
smoke it. Yeah. I can't remember which one of them is the one. It's the one that was developed later.
Crack,
So there was one
crack came
first.
later. Crack came later.
So this is what I discovered. Milton Friedman, the economist. Have you heard of him?
Yes,
Yeah.
believe me. I have.
Okay. I watched an interview with him about all this, and his position is generally decriminalize and regulate and tax. And he said, if it weren't for prohibition of drugs, if it weren't for the war on drugs, that would have never been developed in the first place, because there became this market now and need for a faster high that was cheaper and more powerful. And then that was developed. The crack was developed. So if it had been legal in the first place, he argued, anyway, in this one interview that I watched, it was very intriguing, that would have never have existed in the first place. There would have never been an economic need for it to arise, but
Well,
the war
so
on drugs facilitated it.
that's an interesting case because Reagan he pushed for much stronger mandatory minimum sentences for crack, even though it's basically the same thing as cocaine. It's just a little stronger. So it's so weird. It's like saying, if we decided to outlaw chocolate, and it's like milk chocolate is only going to put you away for 5 years, but dark chocolate, you're going to go away for 20 years. It's the same thing. And if you're smart, it's up to the user. Hopefully you're going to have 1 square of dark chocolate versus 5 squares of milk chocolate. But, people are going to do what they're going to do. So I'd be interested to get to what do you see as the ideal overall approach? What is government's role in telling you what you can and cannot do that's harmful?
I'll be honest. I don't. It's like a lot of things. I don't want to put a lot of power into government's hands to be moral police, like to tell people how they should live. And
That sounds constitutional.
Thank you very much. This is one of many reasons I like the Constitution. So there's no doubt that when Nixon and then Reagan, of course, got involved, all of a sudden there was just this massive amount of dollar bills that were thrown at making a war. It's a war. It's a big, wars are.
Wait, are you implying that the government just throwing billions of dollars at a problem is maybe not the best way to handle it?
Welcome to the Republican Party. I'm joking. That's not true.
Well, this is why I waver like this, and I try to take it topic by topic. And
Registered independent.
look at me on my high horse. I'm better than everybody because I'm an independent. I just on this specific case, I feel like the war on drugs has gone on now for over 40 years, depending on how you define it. And I don't think that it's actually given us. I don't think it's been a success, because even Trump came out not too long ago and he's like, we have a massive problem. Opioids are everywhere, And so when I find myself agreeing with someone that I usually disagree so strongly with, it's like, I think we really do have a significant problem here, right? That's everybody can hear Axel in the background. He's excited to come and say hi.
Axel's
He
on
wants to be
crack.
on the podcast. Yeah, he's just happy to be seeing everybody. I mean, and like I've told you guys before, for me this comes down to a matter of we need to start first at think about the concept of freedom and move outward from there, and then you can make practical and sound decisions on how to deal with certain things. It's just like we do with guns. It's very similar to the approach on guns, where guns is a right. You have the right to possess firearms, but it does get a little constrained when you say you want to have a certain level of power of a gun. Like you can't own like a 747 or excuse me, F-16, you know, or
talking a fighter jet
or a 50 cal. Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? Like there's.
I just want to make sure you didn't think
Okay,
that was
so-
an assault rifle.
So
Is coteen the equivalent of an F-16? I guess I don't know.
I would like to ask if anyone here has is of the libertarian opinion, where it's basically just like let the drugs flow freely. It's just a big free for all.
No, but I listened to 5 hours of
I think that's a misinterpretation of the libertarian.
I listened to 5 hours of an anarcho-capitalist, the Mises Society. Is anyone?
Oh yes, I
familiar
am
with
actually
Mises?
quite
So
familiar.
he has about 12 hours on the Drug War podcast. It's pretty good. I didn't have much time to fact check him on everything, and there were a couple things. So I fact checked him on one thing, and he definitely exaggerated some stuff. So one of the
Wait, are you saying that libertarians exaggerate things sometimes?
yeah, well, it's funny because they're right-leaning and actually pretty far right. A lot of people accuse them of being neo-Confederate because they're so states' rights that they're like, Northern aggression, the war of Northern aggression. But I didn't go very deep on that, and that I definitely am like, I don't know, but he was super anti-Reagan, which is funny for somebody on the right because Reagan is viewed as like a
Christ incarnate.
small G
Second
God
coming
for
of
a lot of
Christ.
Republicans.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I've talked to a lot of conservatives who don't consider themselves libertarians, but also very right-leaning, and they think Reagan was not a good representation of the right's philosophies.
He's mostly neocon.
Okay, but anyway, so one of the things that Reagan pushed for in his war on drugs that he started in 1982, a year after he took office, was that he let me get the actual name of the act. He pushed for the ability of police officers to confiscate not just the drugs, but
Property,
any
cars,
cash
yep.
or property that was associated with it. And then they were able to sell it and split the proceeds with the federal government, which gave a built-in initiative for people to want to take stuff. So if there was a cash-starved police department, they could decide to enforce the law a little stronger than maybe that was good for the community. And so
was just about to bring that up.
so the example that this his name was Chris Calton of the Mises Society gave. This is the one that he exaggerated. In 1987, there was a police department in Maui, Hawaii, that was hovering over the Lopez family's house. They found several, small plot of marijuana plants grown there by the 27-year-old son of the people who own the house. They had tried to convince him to stop growing marijuana. He was mentally unstable and threatened to kill himself. And so they're like, okay, whatever, just don't kill yourself. So he was growing the marijuana against their will in their backyard. And because part of what happened under the Reagan administration, I don't know if Reagan was personally responsible for this, but I believe they completely took away the statute of limitations on this as well. So 5 years later, looking through a file, they found that some marijuana had been grown at this house, so they took the Lopez's family home, and these people were homeless. Yeah, and it was seems like it was a cash grab. Just the Maui police wanted some more money, and but let me run down the list real quick just so we can bag on Reagan, because I had never heard any of this stuff. My father kind of worshipped Reagan. I was born in 1986, the year that this happened. I have kind of kept an open mind. I haven't made up my mind. I've heard some good stuff. I've heard some bad stuff. But this is some bad stuff. It seems like that Reagan did.
Later I'll tell you about Iran-Contra.
Yo, no, I know about that.
Okay.
That's pretty bad. But so he under his administration. So again, it's always hard to tell like how much is the president really responsible for this, or even understood what was happening. But he pushed for under his administration there was the revocation of the Posse Comitatus, which was something that it was in place since post-Civil War, which there were lots of abuses in Reconstruction-era America, where people would use military forces in civil, like in a police role. And that was bad news. Bad stuff would happen. And so it was illegal to do that. Well, Reagan decided he wanted the Air Force to fly around Humboldt County in Northern California and find all the pot growers, and he basically had a weak version of Agent Orange that they called, let's see, I forget the name of it, but he had this stuff that they dumped on the plants and would kill it. And I believe it actually made a lot of people sick and maybe even killed some people because they would harvest it anyway and then sell it, which that's their fault, and that's just stupid. But additionally, under his administration, they removed the exclusionary rule, which is if police obtain evidence illegally, it is inadmissible in a court of law, which legitimate legal scholars who don't seem like they have an axe to grind, some of them think that that is actually an over interpretation of the Fourth Amendment, which so they
say absolutely.
So the Fourth Amendment says that illegal seizure is bad.
It's been around since the Revolution.
Now, an extrapolation from that is that even if you have legitimate evidence that everyone in the court admits is good evidence, but it was gotten illegally, some legal scholars say, well, that's stupid. You should be able to use that. That is not really a violation of the Fourth Amendment. That's just... So anyway, Reagan tried to, or under his administration, they tried to push the exclusionary rule so that cops who kind of bent the law because they're like, I know this guy is selling dope and I got to get it off the streets. And so they go in without a warrant and get stuff. If they were proven right, he's like, that can be evidence in a court of law, which I kind of understand because it's like, if this guy is dead to rights and all they didn't do was do some paperwork. But then, you know, because when something like that is done, the police officer is putting his own reputation on the line. Because if there's nothing, then it's his fault.
Yeah.
So, but then the danger is, what if he goes in and a confrontation sparks and he shoots somebody and then they find there's no drugs? Then he just shot a dude.
Which has happened.
Which has happened, exactly. That's happened multiple times. So that one's a little rough. And then another thing is he wanted to, he did allow, they allowed, helicopters just fly around and peer in your windows. They put a 400-foot...
And for what? What is all this for?
You were doing pot.
You see what I'm saying? Like, it's a massive overreach of government.
Okay.
Anybody who's okay with minimizing the power and overreach of government.
About Reagan.
Okay.
During the Cold War, he'd have his national security meetings. And before they'd start talking about Russia, he'd have them go around the table and he'd ask each agency, what are you doing for the war on drugs? And so they had to come prepared with an anecdote of how they were helping to stamp out drugs in America. Again, this is all according to the Mises Institute.
Everyone at the table.
But yeah, and so even if their agency only, had nothing to do with the drug trade, somehow, they had to.
Okay, so
He did
let's.
very strongly.
I want to shift the conversation
Yes,
a little bit,
sure,
if
yeah.
you guys are okay
Yeah.
with it. So, abuses of the government.
I don't want to make you sad. If you want to shift, we'll let you shift.
Hell yeah. Okay, so abuses of the government are bad. That's just something we can all agree on, right? So, creating a financial incentive to bust people for drugs is going to lead to some people being busted who really don't need to be. So, but just because the law is abused doesn't mean that we don't need to have a law. Doesn't mean that we need to abolish the law. So, I think, pro-drug proponents are they're always going to talk about the stuff that we've done wrong in enforcing the law. But is that a distraction from the real question, which is, when is it appropriate to regulate drugs? When is it appropriate to bust people for using drugs? Where's that line? Like, what laws are appropriate? I mean, a libertarian would say, let the drugs flow. It's a free for all. But I don't think.
It's a little. That's kind of simplifying what they say, but yeah.
Questions.
Okay.
Jordan,
Yes.
do you believe that it is the government's role to protect you from yourself?
I mean, you could take
No
that
more
in so many
big
different
gulps.
ways. And give me. I mean, it's a case by case
No
example.
more French fries.
So,
So it's a case by case thing. Like, yeah, obviously, I don't think the government should regulate big gulps and French fries. But let's say that I don't know. Let's say I have a bad night. I don't sleep. Or I don't sleep for a couple days, and I drink a little bit too much, and my girlfriend just broke up with me, and I go on a bender and pass out in a ditch somewhere. Then yeah, I would hope the government would pick me up and maybe put me in a lockbox to keep me safe.
but
That's
wait.
that-
Well, so there, it would be impossible to even write a law about any person who just broke up with their girlfriend and found drunk in a ditch, put in a lockbox. There couldn't be laws about that. So
I don't want anyone to try to make that law. That's
so that would actually be just the people who hold civil servant roles taking it upon themselves. A police officer
to act morally.
So your question is, should the government save me from myself?
Yeah, so I mean, I understand that it's going to be case by case, but
it would be case by case.
Categorically, if you had to answer, which would you say, yes or no?
I'd say no.
No, which I agree with.
Yeah.
Now,
if you're putting it down on paper, because what the police are going to follow is what's on paper.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
So
My-
what would you put on paper?
my second question
Okay.
is,
full reign.
do you believe that it's the government's role to protect Nick from you?
To protect, yes.
Yes,
Absolutely, yeah.
And I completely agree with that
Yeah.
as well.
And this is where we find that line.
And so I think it's tough, but we've legalized alcohol. There are tons of ways that the government can put you in jail based on your usage of alcohol.
Yeah.
And it would be the same thing with all the drugs. If we legalized all the drugs, you could still be put in jail for the tiniest usage of marijuana if you were driving over a legal limit
Right,
with
yeah,
a vehicle.
okay.
And so
It's
illegal, completely making all drug usage, recreational drug usage, illegal is protecting you from you.
wait. So
And I would say a violation of freedom.
making it. I'm sorry. Did you say legal or illegal?
So making it completely illegal
Oh, okay. Yeah.
to use drugs recreationally is protecting you from you.
Okay. Right.
Now, I think that the
Well,
government.
just for the record, that's not what I'm advocating at all. I'm not
Right.
saying
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
we're- and we're
I think
No,
my point.
I'm just using.
It's
you
somewhere
to
in the
make-
middle.
I'm
It's
just
somewhere in
using
the
you to
middle,
make
yeah.
this point clear. Yeah, to
Yeah.
kind of put the terms on the table.
John's doing a good job of fleshing.
I'll be
this
the
whole thing out.
avatar for the ignorant citizen.
No, that's
No, but I see what you're saying.
So for example, you got Frank, and he's just sitting at his house, and he just wants to, smoke a doobie, or have a drink of whiskey, or smoke a cigarette, or whatever. Does the government, or shoot up meth? Honestly, let's even do the thought experiment, or snort cocaine, or smoke cocaine, the thing of it, whatever he wants to do in his own home, and he's just chilling, doing his thing. Now.
He's got kids.
Now we have he's got kids.
No, let's not throw that monkey wrench in yet. So just him,
Yeah,
Joe
okay.
Schmo sitting in his house.
This is him. And now let's just say that the police had some sort of way of knowing that he was doing that, like a sensor that picked up on the odor. Whatever. I'm just for conversation's sake. Now, do the police have the right to come in, break down the door, and say, "You just drank whiskey, you just snorted cocaine, you just did a thing of meth, whatever, hit a meth.
Yeah.
Now we're taking you to jail," and he'll be like, "But I was just doing it to myself." Yeah, but you're a blight on society, because 50 years hence you're gonna be in a hospital because of XYZ medical condition or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
The core of the argument here is that it's not the substances that should be regulated. It's the
it's how
people's
behavior.
behavior. It's behavior.
just like guns. Just like guns. Because if you walk around town with an AK-47 or a whatever M16, that's different than just owning one.
It's funny that you use the word regulate, because if we decriminalized all these substances, made them legal for recreational use, regulation would, for the first time ever, actually oversee the production and sale and transport of these drugs, which doesn't happen right now. Right now,
Yeah,
cartels
that's a
are
good
responsible for that. People with guns who are beheading people are responsible for transporting them. Now, that doesn't mean that it's a noble thing and should be taken on by civil servants. I'm not arguing for that,
Yeah.
but right now they are not regulated. What's
control.
regulated
There's
is
no
you.
control.
That's
Right,
the only thing
yeah,
that's regulated is you. The government doesn't regulate.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah. So
My behavior. They regulate
yes,
my behavior.
basically
Right,
yes,
yeah.
your behavior.
And add to it that when you're using those substances, because let's just admit that people are going to use these substances no matter what law you make. They're, like I said, like I told you guys before, you're doing cocaine and you want to do cocaine, you want to get high off of it. The only way you're going to get it is from the guy on the street, and it's probably laced with fentanyl. Fentanyl is an extremely powerful drug. It could kill you that night. Now, if he was going to do his recreational coke snort, and he got it from a dispensary or some other sort of societally approved way, it wouldn't have fentanyl in it. He wouldn't die that night. He wouldn't become a medical case for the whole society to deal with, taxpayer money to pay for in one way or another. He wouldn't become a situation for the police to deal with, which of course is taxpayer money too. He would just be a guy that was coked up in his house that night. And yeah, he'll probably shorten his lifespan for, but look how powerful tobacco is.
Right.
It kills people. It literally kills people. It gives people lung cancer.
Talked about the externalities that go into drug use, but I would like to shift the conversation
That's
again
what
if
I
you
was
guys are
trying to
okay.
get
So,
to.
one thing that has been on my mind the last week is the point that the legality of drug use is a completely separate discussion. Well, it's not completely different, but it's distinct from the discussion of whether drug use is moral. And that's a whole other conversation because I could maybe get on board with the fact that we should say maybe we shouldn't say that if Joe wants to do meth, then fine, do meth.
Jesus wants to weigh in on this.
Yeah, we got.
Well, hold on. Let me finish my sentence.
Going the moral route here is.
So no. Hold on. You don't know what I'm. You don't. I don't think you. I think you are assuming what I'm going to say. I don't think you actually know what I'm going to say. So that doesn't mean though that if my mom were to call me and tell me that one of my brothers was addicted to meth, that would be just devastating. That's completely different. Like at that point, it's like I don't care what the law is. I don't want anyone that I love, anyone that I care about, to have to deal with an addiction to a substance like that.
Sure.
And that's so we're with the exception of Jonathan, all of us are single and childless, right?
Right.
And I think that's our hypothetical situation so far has been a single childless person, or at least somebody who, if he is childless, he doesn't have a say. Yeah, but see, it's very fun and entertaining to discuss legality. But if one of our loved ones were to deal with an addiction like this, it changes everything.
Right, and that's why the concept of just blanket anarchy, let it flow, that's I don't know, I've never heard of any legitimate person that's making an argument for that. The argument is just
I'll give you some phone numbers, but keep talking.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, I could too.
The way I approach it, at least the way I see it, is the way we're doing it now doesn't work. The drug war is a failure. It's been going on a long time, and all we see now is we've created a massive industry that's underground, that's buoyed up by violence, men with guns, cartels with tremendous amounts of power and sway, and actually, surprisingly, the ability to lobby politicians in multiple countries, and secretly lobby them, bribe them.
Frighten them. And
The drug industry also has that ability too. You think that the drug cartels in Mexico are just sitting around waiting to see where the wind blows in DC? No. I guarantee you, I guess I'm going into conspiracy theory mode here, but I guarantee you that South American drug cartels have a presence in DC, and they have some politicians by the balls.
And what do they want? What do drug cartels want most of all? The drug war to continue the way it is right now, because they make the most money with the status quo.
Well, whoever benefits from the status quo is always going to want the status quo.
The drug cartels, the most violent entities on our planet, basically, the most powerful and consistently worrisome groups are drug cartels.
So,
Again, I don't know if this is true, but according to some podcasts I listened to today, actually, the cartels are relatively stable. They're mostly family organizations. They fight one another predominantly, and every now and then they'll decapitate somebody that needs it.
or they'll fill up a dump truck with decapitated bodies and leave it in the middle of a highway somewhere. Which has literally happened.
There are a bunch of newer, smaller competitors to the cartels that are much more brutal, which are not established businesses. So it would be the equivalent of a terrorist group versus a standing army, and so I don't even know if these even have names, but smaller, scrappier.
The mom and pop.
The,
The hipster cocaine shops.
So anyway, what were you going to say, Andrew?
It's like the old mafia and the new mafia. You know, they butt heads.
So yeah, the way the drug war is right now, it implores those types of people to continue to be what they are, what they're doing, and it's legitimately one of my biggest gripes about it is government overreach is part of the drug war as we know it, and massive terrorism of these cartels, and their power is not going away anytime soon. And I even discovered that there's roundabout loophole ways of these cartels getting funding from Wachovia Bank and the legitimate quote unquote institutions of lending, where they find shell games. They found methods to get money to them, because everybody can make money off of it. So the thing that these bad guys want most of all is for it to continue, and you got to consider that. You got to say, why should I want the thing that the bad guys like to continue?
Okay, let's flip that around. What are the bad guys? Who are the bad guys on the other side of the argument? Like, so I swear I'm not one of those George Soros is literally the devil people.
Oh, okay.
I swear to God that's not what I am. But what do you think? Why would someone like George Soros fund a video to argue for the legalization of drugs? Because I think one thing we could like I said, I'm not Alex Jones. I'm not saying any George Soros theories, but I think we can all agree that George Soros is not an apolitical person.
I don't even know who he is because I'm so sick of hearing his name and
I don't actually know much about him.
What if the guy's actually a really nice guy that just he has ideas and he's like, I want to put my money into this and that, but we've turned him into this big.
Okay, so
I mean, who knows? I don't know the mind and heart of George Soros.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a dead end. I'm not going to pursue that conversation. I'm going to have to do some research and come back to it. So, but I would like to ask is, do you guys think that it is pursuing the mitigation of the harmful effects of illegal drugs? Is that a worthwhile pursuit?
Wait, so say it again. Worthwhile to mitigate.
Is it worthwhile to mitigate? Sorry, let me try that again. Is it worthwhile to try to mitigate the effects of currently illegal drugs in the U.S.? Is that something that the government should work on? Is it something that private people should work on?
I think that there should be work, but I think that the work that needs to be done needs to be changed dramatically.
So what needs to be done?
I have a two-pronged approach to this. One is a generic question that I'm going to steamroll straight through. Don't respond.
Okay.
But just start thinking about what is the effect on society of making something illegal? Does it send good positive messaging to people? You know, is it helpful to the up and coming generations to say, okay, I know that that's illegal, so it's kind of like a highlighter to say this is something to be careful about.
Well, it tells you, it draws a line. So if you're on one side of the line, you view
I said not to answer it.
View it one way, and then if you're on the other side of the line, you view it another. Like, if drugs is your world, you know, you're a dealer, your parents, brothers are dealers, and you grew up in that world, you're on that side of the line. So it does draw a line between your society. I don't know if that's good or not. Maybe we don't want to do that the way that we're doing. I am open to changing things, like Nick said, definitely.
In an intelligent way.
Well, okay, so I know you want to steamroll this, but I want to say, I mean, it's illegal for my landlord to evict me based on the fact that I'm a man. So that's helpful. That's a helpful law.
But you see, okay, so where I was going with that question was I wanted to move it now. What do you guys feel about the seatbelt law? Because,
yeah, I've always had a problem. Helmet laws, seatbelt laws. I've always had a problem with that because it's like, who do you think you are telling me to protect myself? I can protect my own self. Thank you.
Helmet lobbyist, man.
So it pisses me off, actually.
Turning the frogs gay.
I know I've already brought up this occurrence once, but my mother always scoffed at the seatbelt law. Had she followed it, she'd probably still be alive today.
Really?
Died in a car crash. Yeah, she was ejected from the vehicle 40 feet from the car.
Do you think if the seatbelt law had not existed, she would be alive?
No.
Okay.
Because she's going to do what she wants anyway.
She's going to do what she wants anyway. Exactly. Yeah. Gotcha. And if she was ever pulled over, she'd just put on her seatbelt before the cop came up.
What's
So-
the point of putting a law in there?
Yeah, so I don't. Well, no, I mean I'm not sure because I think
Yeah.
there is probably. I'm just gonna pull a number out of my butt. I'm gonna say 20% of the population who are just like, nope, okay, yep,
yeah.
who probably wouldn't put it on because they're lazy, but they put it on because there's a law. Now, I think that if that is the only purpose, if that's the only portion of the population that is actually swayed by the law, then they would actually probably be swayed by just a public campaign, which would be cheaper, and it wouldn't involve police, pull you over and stuff to check to see if you're wearing.
Dare to say no to drugs, kids.
If there was something like that, wear your seatbelt. Here's the stats. Look at this dead guy. That 20% would put their seatbelt on. I think that would be enough. It wouldn't need to be the law. So I feel like the seatbelt, to go back to what we were talking about, is the government's role to protect you from you, and we all said no. But I have a little bit of, even before my mom died, I had a little bit of check at the back of my mind, thinking about seatbelts, because stuff like that, it's like absolutely, completely, the statistics are on the side of the seatbelt helps you. It's going to save you. And it does, because the whole weight on society thing, yes, I mean, so, yeah, when somebody dies, it affects all of society. It is a drain. And so...
I mean, it affects you. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, so, but it's not the government's role to do that. So anyway, I think that I do fall in the category of, if something like that is they've discovered categorically it's better to wear seatbelts than not, I think it should be a public service campaign, public ad campaign, rather than a law.
All right. So what I really think that you've said there, I feel like I see into that probably more than maybe you're even right at this moment trying to say, and because what I thought is it's not a blanket just making it the drugs flow in the streets thing. We're talking about a comprehensive, intelligent application, taking into account each different substance and how it affects the human body and what kind of health effects it have, what it causes people to do when they're walking around the street. Like you see Baltimore, the crack addicts in Baltimore do the lean. You seen the lean? Right?
Yeah,
It's very sad.
I've seen things, man.
Very sad,
I've
right?
seen things.
Okay.
Yeah.
People who do marijuana that's never going to be a thing for them. They're not going to be having that kind of consequence, right?
Your marijuana is not strong enough.
Let's.
So what I wanted to make sure that we got into this conversation was the conversation about Portugal. So Portugal.
Okay. And Switzerland.
Now I want to be very careful not to over exaggerate what has happened in Portugal with their changes that they made to their policy, but they had a serious problem. Okay, I'm just going to read this thing. This is from the Vancouver Sun. Okay, it's an article. It just kind of sums up what Portugal did. In the 1990s, Portugal was in the throes of a national crisis, averaging 360 drug overdose deaths a year in a country of 10 million people. Today, it has one of Europe's lowest rates of drug, alcohol, and tobacco use, and the number of overdose deaths in 2016 was 26, as opposed to the 360. In a week-long series, and they go through, like, they examine more of it. So, Portugal instituted a bunch of changes because they were faced with, a serious problem, but they decided to treat it differently. So, in 2001, Portugal implemented changes to their drug enforcement protocols that saw dramatic drops in overdoses, HIV infection, and drug-related crime. So basically what they did was they did a bunch of different comprehensive actions, okay? It wasn't just, okay, everybody in Portugal can just do whatever the hell they want. It wasn't that. They instituted a new program where the government actually took some of the money, well, a lot of the money, most of the money that they were spending on police to go and find the drug addicts, arrest them, and imprison them. They took that money instead, and they put them. What they said was, if you have more than what you're going to use personally for your own personal recreation, no, it's not legal. but you can't be put in prison for it. Instead, that the money that would have been used to pay the police to put you into prison, that money is now diverted into a treatment program where now you're assigned a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a counselor, and a medical consultant. So and they started to treat it more as a medical condition because these people are medically addicted. Their bodies are addicted. Their free will has really been taken away from them. Okay, so that was one of the things they did. Another thing they did was they took a lot of that money and they did a syringe sharing program. So because there's this thing that comes along with underground drug usage is you share needles, right? Here you go, and then the cops come and you got to hide, and there's no. So you have this logistical problem of the equipment that you're using to get high. So what they did was they said, okay, you can get high, but here, use these needles instead. That wiped out the HIV and the random other diseases that were spreading amongst it, right? That was another thing they implemented. So look at this plan. It's comprehensive, right? It's not just a do whatever you want, right? Another thing they did was instead of politically and socially castigating everybody and saying these people are criminals, they're of the devil, because that was actually how Portuguese people saw drug dealers before them, or drug users before that point. They saw them as in league with Satan. It was literally, people said that. They said this is of the devil. You know? So they changed the social stigma and the idea to be, these people are not criminals. These people are addicts, and they are medical cases. And we need to take care of them. They're sick. These people are sick. And I think that is probably one of the biggest things that we can all internalize. No matter what country, no matter what the laws are that are surrounding your society, people who are addicted to a thing, maybe it was their choice, but they've lost their ability to choose. They've lost a little bit. Their free will's been weared down to an extent. So, and I hate to say this, but it really now is kind of on the rest of us to take them aside. It's your mother, it's your father, it's your sister, it's your brother. Like you said, if your brother was a meth addict, you wouldn't care about any laws. You wouldn't care about, except if you saw the police beating him and then arresting him and then taking him to jail, you'd be like, wait.
I'd be upset about that.
Let me talk to my brother. Let me just.
Plus, I thought he deserved it.
Yeah, I mean, so depending on what else he's doing when he's doing that, but he's a medical condition. He needs a clinic, not a prison. Right?
And that's the other world of this conversation that we're already pushing our time here, but it's like
okay.
The rat paradise. So
yeah,
we'll post links to the videos that we watched, but one of the videos was
bunch of rats having sex.
Yeah, it was a rat orgy. No, it was basically comparing how a rat isolated in a cage treated. Okay, so basically, a scientist took a rat, put him in a cage. One bottle had was it methamphetamine laced water or something like that, cocaine laced water, and one was just plain water. Yeah. And the rat predictably killed himself on the cocaine laced water. But another scientist tried to recreate it. But what he did was he took a bunch of rats and he put them in a rat paradise, and he found that they did not gravitate towards the cocaine laced water in the same way. And I think that is a key aspect of this conversation. Is you have to look at the underlying issues, because nobody wants to destroy their life with cocaine. Nobody really wants that. Maybe some people do, I don't know, but the average person doesn't want that. And what I see is a lot of despair in society, where you wake up in the morning, you're miserable. You get up and cook breakfast, you're miserable. You go to work, you're miserable. Come home, you're miserable. Every minute of your day is just misery and despair and worry and concern. There have been periods in my life where my life was literally like that. It's in those moments it's easy to understand why people would turn to some kind of narcotic.
They want to be happy.
To just escape that. And people know that they're destroying their lives, but they still do it.
Yeah, I thought that was a great point, but where that video lost me was when they started saying that's why we need to, and so
Sorry, I chose such bad videos. But to be fair, I did put a whole bunch of other videos up. Thomas Sowell.
I mean, so the first thing that I
Thomas
would,
Sowell, he's my man. Yeah, I haven't seen it yet.
the first
Yeah.
thing that I would ask them
Should've
is
chose that one.
define we, and it seemed
Yeah.
pretty clear that the we in that was the government.
It's
And it's
Yeah.
not the government's job to fulfill you. And it will become an authoritarian government if it thinks that they have the right and actually the charge of fulfilling you.
right.
Because they're going to fill you with whatever is most pleasing to their end goals. And that's not good. It's going to end up 1984.
It's going to be a bunch of Harvard graduates applying the stuff that they learned in Sociology
Yeah.
101 to us. That's what it's
Yeah,
going to be.
Exactly.
Because if you look at history, government has always been a bit behind the society. The society progresses through, education or whatever, and then the representatives are like, "Oh, is that what you all want? Okay, then I'll vote with that then." Because they're not going to do so otherwise. They would never vote against their constituents because then they'll get voted out of office the next year or the next year.
Right. Okay, so that's a good point. So the government, what do they do then? And I think that the government's job is to create conditions where people can pursue what they want to do. It's the
absolutely.
pursuit of happiness, and that means security. And a lot of these social problems that we have where we see all this despair, not all of them, but a number of them stem from bad policy that makes it hard for people to get jobs, makes them hard to make enough money to help their families.
Exactly.
And a lot of these regulations, they're not necessary.
If you get caught with a gram of cocaine in your car and you get pulled over for speeding, cop finds cocaine in your car, guess what? You're going to prison. And guess what? Now you're a convict. And guess what? When you do come out after the mandatory minimum has been served, which could be 5 to 15 years depending on how much cocaine and the other circumstances, oh, God forbid there was a gun in your car, even if you're in a state that allows guns, now you can't get a job. Now you can't ever become a good father or a good worker.
Well,
You know,
I've met
because-
people. I've met people who have
Come
who
back
have
from
been
that,
convicted and they've gone on to leave very very happy and successful.
Okay, but they had to swim against
They're the
the
exception.
current.
Yeah, they're the well, and of course I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah, the policy's bad. The policy's very bad. Mandatory minimums. We didn't get to that. I wanted to bring that up. That's it's a vestige of the Reagan era.
We need reform. Though, is
Real
what
quick,
reform really-
Andrew, I feel like everybody at the table, aside from you, basically thinks that the drug war should be almost completely dropped. So why don't you put in a final word for more or less keeping the status quo with a few tweaks?
Status quo. All right.
Speak. Drop some truth bombs, Andrew.
Speak for the keeping the status quo. I mean, I would say that the system we have in place, we do have schedules or categories for each set of drugs. Just shuffle a few in between. If marijuana is too high, lower it. But the existing system, it does have that flexibility, I think, to include all of this. It's kind of separate from the war on drugs, I would say. The war on drugs kind of seems separate to me. Like, it's not like, oh, this is a Schedule 1 drug, so we need to treat this more seriously in our war against drugs. It's like, I mean, where's the legislation that's backing the war on drugs? I don't exactly know where that came from. Did it just come straight from
We're talking of decades and
the executive branch? Like,
Almost completely from the executive branch.
thought so.
Reagan actually
crusades. Big crusades.
he pushed to make sure that the funding for the drug war was not dependent upon the Senate. It was going to be,
Yes.
and he made sure that it wasn't. It was something that because the executive is responsible for enforcement,
Yeah, police funded.
and so he wanted to keep it all in-house, kind of in that branch of government. So,
That's interesting. So yeah, I do have an issue with that already off the bat because I tend to want to side with whatever the American people were going with. If they don't have a direct say, like if Congress hasn't come in and done anything, then I have a problem with that. Like rogue executive branch, nobody wants that. I don't care who the president is, Obama, Trump, or whatever. But
I agree.
public input is good, research is good, always in decision making. So maybe we could do some research on some of these drugs that have been a little controlled. I would say open that up. I'm open to that, and go from there. If it's not too harmful, then think about decriminalization, so to speak. But I still don't want the stuff anywhere near children. It's really a difficult topic to even put in boundaries. It's that sort of an issue.
You see how if it were regulated, the way tobacco is regulated, the way alcohol is regulated, children don't have as much access to this as if it was being peddled on the street. Because a drug dealer is not going to care if he's giving it to a kid or an adult. He's getting money. Oh, kid, here you go. Thanks for the money.
Like
Boom.
you said earlier, he's already on the other side of that
Yes,
line,
yes.
so he's less likely to take notice of other lines that he might cross.
Yeah.
Okay.
A point that I wanted to make about, since it still is illegal.
Yeah.
It's easy for me to talk about this. I'm not going to ask anybody else any questions. I've never used any drug aside from aspirin or
Ibuprofen,
but yeah,
alcohol, sugar.
I haven't used any illegal
Caffeine.
controlled substances, and as a Christian, so I believe Romans 13, God allows governing authorities to set rules, and so that's been one of the main motivators for me. I mean, I haven't even had much opportunity to use drugs, but since it is illegal, for, let's say, the guy that we were using as an example, he doesn't have any kids, he's sitting alone in his apartment, taking meth, whatever. At least he is contributing to some guy who's cooking meth with his kids, who probably shot his competitor. It is inherently, right now, the way that it is a corrupt business. And if you are purchasing it, you are the demand, and you are driving that
So what if
industry.
you're a Christian in Oregon?
Yeah.
Where it's legal and stuff,
Yeah.
then light it up, unless you got to say
Yeah, man.
All right.
So what I was going to try to say earlier,
That's a really good point,
To
though.
let
That's a
Jesus
really good
weigh
point.
in on it.
Jesus is okay with this.
Well, no. What I was going to say is that let's see. It's I actually pulled it up. I don't have it currently, but Jesus said, "It is not what you put into the body that makes you unclean. It is what comes out that makes you unclean."
Comes out of the
And
mouth. Not what goes into the mouth, what comes out.
yeah, and so it's the substance alone is not inherently wrong, and I am kind of the opinion that, so in the Garden of Eden, God said, "Here are all of the plants for you to eat," and
Some of them might make
Including
you
this methamphetamine plant here.
we didn't even really get into. I think that the whole dissolving of the ego thing with a lot of psychoactive drugs is something that, if done responsibly, is helpful and would maybe make less dicks out there. But currently, again, to return to the point that I'm trying to make, since it is illegal right now, it is an inherently corrupt business, and to participate in it, you're funding criminals.
Yeah,
who
that's a good
are
point.
going to do lots of other criminal things, probably.
Agreed.
So,
But if it came to a vote,
which is why I think that we should change the laws. Yeah.
and if it came to a vote, we would say, you know what, this is bad, because now it's almost impossible not to. If you buy avocados, you're actually funding drug cartels. Did you know that? Because a drug cartel exists. But the only misgivings I have, honestly, and I wanted to bring this up because I wanted to display that I'm not. This is by no means a black and white subject. It's not as simple as like a lot of people would say. Like your friends, you said. If you buy avocados, you fund cartels. All right. Well, what's wrong with buying avocados, right? I won't go into details, but basically drug cartels use avocados as another stream of income, and it facilitates their activities. One of the biggest misgivings I have about decriminalization of drugs, legalization of drugs, and putting drug cartels out of business is that cartels will then move on to something else. All right, and it's actually one of the biggest fears of my entire life, because I've wanted to actually maybe get into this line of work for a number of years now, is anti-human trafficking. And the next business that would become a thing for them is going to be humans, sex, and organs. Those are big money. Very
Oh
big
my
money.
gosh.
So I admit that could be a pretty good, actually in a very strange way, a good argument against decriminalization or legalization of drugs, because drugs are just this thingy that the cartels move and cut and make and
Real objective is money.
right.
Right. They want to make money.
And
right?
everyone
Money
who's
and
putting
power.
it into their body is doing it willingly,
choosing to do
presumably. Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
So I cannot escape this. This is if I'm being intellectually honest. I think human trafficking and that other stuff that would literally make slaves out of more humans would become a thing. So
Dude, there's already a fair amount of that happening.
there is. Oh boy.
It's crazy that doesn't get.
The Super Bowl is ruined for me. Let's put it that way. I think this might be a topic for another time.
Yeah, we gotta wrap it up, guys.
So, but I did want to get that in because I want this to seem well-rounded amongst us all, including myself. No one here at this table is like extreme one way or the other, and because it's not a topic that is that stark one way or the other, you know, it deserves intellectual integrity.
To be fair to the people who might listen to this, who extremely disagree with us,
You mean all those old people?
all those old people or all the young people, but we're kind of we are our own little bubble.
Sure,
So
absolutely.
yeah, and I think it's the fact that we can cooperate and create a podcast. It says a lot about our personalities and our compatibility with each other. So we don't want to make the mistake of assuming that most people feel the way that we do.
No, if they don't,
There's
then
certainly a
they're
lot of other opinions out there. So
No,
I mean, they're
absolutely.
stupid opinions, but yeah.
Do you think Trump would be a better president if he got high?
who's to say he isn't already high?
Well, apparently he doesn't even so much as drink.
He took a big hit off a bong before he went and made that
He
speech.
has a good reason for not drinking.
Jordan Peterson took a big old hit on the H3H3 podcast. Did you see that? Oh yeah, it's fun to watch actually. He acts all coy about it, but that guy knows what he's doing. He knew how to do it. Yeah.
That's fun.
Well, with that, let's go ahead and close this out. I was so happy to do this. This is just a fun. I was looking forward to this for the last couple of weeks, and it was great talking with you guys about it. And I think we came to it with like a pretty level-headed approach.
Yeah.
And
I'm surprised
Did
at how
we
much we
solve
agree with each
anything?
other. I think
this is what we solved. Marijuana should not be Schedule 1.
Okay, yeah.
Agree, Jordan?
We all agree on that.
Agree, John?
Yeah, what's the name of it?
Agree, Andrew?
Name of the senator who was grilling the
Marijuana.
NIDA?
Les Dix, you solved toxic masculinity inadvertently.
But no, somebody sent out the video. It's the old attorney general for like Louisiana, Tennessee or something. He's got the white hair. He's all. Who posted that?
I don't. Dude, my Facebook is deleted.
You mean Gowdy?
Gowdy, yeah, Trey Gowdy, and he's like, I'm not advocating for making it not Schedule 1. He's like, but what the heck? He's like freaking out.
I was cheering him.
And it's so funny because he spent a bunch of years taking that stuff off the streets, but he's also like, I was just doing my job,
Dude.
but what?
Dude, like we always forget, politicians are people too, man.
Oh yeah, and
They
there's
are
some
people.
there's some really good, hardworking, conscientious
Yeah.
people. Yeah, just watch C-SPAN.
Who was the former Speaker of the House who's now gone?
I don't know why you're looking at me like I would know the
Paul
answer
Ryan?
to that.
No, before him. The guy that was the guy that cried all the time.
Oh, Boehner?
Boehner. You know what Boehner's doing?
You're right when you said cried. I was like, oh, Boehner.
He's the crier. He's a sensitive guy. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, I know.
Now he's working with a corporation that's a marijuana corporation. By the way, that's coming. Hey, I don't want to like tip anybody off here. I don't want to go to prison like Martha Stewart, but now's the time to invest in marijuana. Just
Hell
saying.
yeah, man.
Just saying.
Let's buy a yacht. But guys, we got to wrap this up. So
If only we were in on it when Google's first started.
let's
corporation.
let's wrap it up.
Okay, we're
I wanted to. Can I throw one quick comment? I wanted to talk about.
Stop bogarting the conversation.
I
Wrap
wanted-
it up.
I wanted to stop. I wanted to
Wrap it
talk
up.
about precision policing, but that's a whole other topic. Let's wrap it up. Okay, Nick, what do you got? What do you got
Use
first?
drones.
yeah,
Use
okay,
drones
I
to hit
already
the
said
potheads.
Just kill everyone with drones. Yeah.
There was plenty more that we could have talked about. Lots more. I was going to compare Portugal to the Philippines, the way they deal with drugs. Talk about stark differences. But you make your decision, and we could talk about it.
Yes. So if you we want to hear from you, our listeners. So drop us a comment on SoundCloud, send us an email, social media, and we will go over your comments in the next podcast, and we'll pick apart what you have to say.
And just to completely ruin that nice and tidy wrap up, I just want to say, if in this coming presidential election Joe Biden is the Democratic senator, do not vote for him, because he is the senator that introduced the asset forfeiture law. Who he's and he yeah.
But meme.
And he's also very creepy. He massages little girl's shoulders.
Yeah, have you seen that video?
Talking to that little girl.
It's a
Oh.
montage. It's not one video, it's a montage.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, we've gone way off topic.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Thanks. Take care. Love you all. Love to see you. Bye. Mwah.
Bye.